Hey everybody, welcome back to another week of COVID Connect. This week, we're going to be taking a look at the principles of Ignatian discernment. This is a body of spiritual wisdom that was developed by Saint Ignatius of Loyola, who founded the Jesuits and lived sort of around the beginning of the 16th century. During his life, Saint Ignatius wrote down a lot of guidelines and principles and practices to help people discern, or in other words, make decisions about their life using God's help and consulting God's will. All of St. Ignatius's insights into this area stem from an experience he had when he was a young man. During a battle, his leg was basically shattered by a cannonball, and so he was stuck in bed for several weeks to recover. Up until that point, Ignatius had not been very religious at all. Instead, he spent most of his time daydreaming about being a chivalrous knight. Think about like a Three Musketeer, for example. The problem, though, is that in the castle where he was recovering, there weren't any books about knights available. All he had to read were A Life of Christ and A Life of the Saints. To his surprise, though, he actually enjoyed reading these books. And instead of spending all his time daydreaming about being a knight, he would actually go back and forth between daydreaming about being a knight and daydreaming about being a saint, like Saint Benedict or Saint Dominic. And he actually got pleasure from both of these daydreams. But after a while, he started to notice that there was a difference in the kind of pleasure he got from these two fantasies. This is how St. Ignatius himself describes that difference. And note when I read that he is referring to himself in the third person. When he was thinking about the things of the world, he took much delight in them, but afterwards, when he was tired and put them aside, he found that he was dry and discontented. But when he thought of going to Jerusalem, barefoot and eating nothing but herbs and undergoing all the other rigors that he saw the saints had endured, not only was he consoled when he had these thoughts, but even after putting them aside, he remained content and happy. In other words, fantasizing about being a knight made him feel happy and excited at first, but ultimately that passed and he just felt kind of empty and hollow. It was kind of like a crash after a sugar rush. But thinking about being a saint gave him a much deeper happiness, one that brought him peace and one that stayed with him. Of course, this experience is what inspired St. Ignatius to enter religious life. But more importantly, it also gave him the insight that God can speak to us through our experiences, through our reactions, and through our emotions. Paying attention to these things and understanding them is a valid way of trying to interpret God's will. So if you want to know what God wants for our life, we don't have to sit around waiting for him to give us a phone call. Instead, he's already speaking to us through the motions of our heart. And so we can become more attuned to his will. All we need to do is pay attention to how we're feeling and learn how we can understand that, how we can interpret it, and how we can apply what we learn to our lives. We'll start talking about how to do that tomorrow.